All right. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever the time may be in your time zone. My name is Kara Warburton, and I have assembled a panel of 4 experts in the field of artificial intelligence and language resources to ask them their opinions on the relationship between language resources and artificial intelligence. So let me just start by a brief introduction to the video. The backdrop would be that with the exploding interest in artificial intelligence and its increasing adoption throughout the world, in this interview, we explore views of a panel of experts about AI and its impacts on the language industry. So let me first ask each panelist to introduce themselves, starting with Daniel Sebesta.
Yep. Thank you for having me on this panel. I have been a linguist for the past 20 years, linguist as a translator. I have been very heavily involved in the association world, associations like the American Translators Association and others. Aside from translation, I also have a degree in business administration with a specialization in pricing and strategy. And I have been a pricing consultant for the language industry. And that all is in addition to my keen interest in how technology has been affecting the language professions and what we can do about it.
Thanks, Daniel. Yuri?
Yes, thank you, Karen, for putting it all together. I am a university professor. I teach at the University of Georgia in the United States, and my home department is philosophy, but I'm also affiliated with the AI Institute. So that's part of me. So the other part of me is that I am a part-time translator, actually, and I've been doing it for a while. So far, these 2 occupations really have had no intersections, but now I have a project that kind of tries to bring them together. So the project is to explore broadly philosophical, cognitive, and linguistic dimensions of human and machine translation. So that's where I am right now.
Thanks, Yuri. Michael?
Hi there. Thanks for having us today. I am an enterprise content strategist by trade. I have led multiple content strategies. I spent 38 of my 43 years leading content and knowledge systems at IBM, and have spent probably the last near 20 years working with AI in one capacity or another.
Thanks. Thanks, Michael. And Alan?
As I'm an emeritus professor of linguistics at Brigham Young University, I still have a lab and some research assistants. We call it the Translation Research Group. And I began just a little while ago in machine translation in September of 1970, a little over 50 years ago. But I've transitioned in 1978, started transitioning to tools for human translators, and then a bit of philosophy of language with a colleague philosopher, Terry Warner. And then I've been doing service, trying to do service to the language sector and the American Translators Association, and then the International Federation of Translators, and work on various language-related standards, especially translation-related. And right now, my focus is something seemingly very simple, which is to get labels on translation output so you know where it's coming from. Now that machine translation has improved dramatically, sometimes it's not obvious what it is. So that's where I am now.
Okay. Thank you all for those introductions. And let me just briefly introduce myself as the moderator. I'm Kara Warburton, and I'm a terminologist and very interested in learning more about how terminology resources might be leveraged to support the development of AI, hence the reason for this interview. Okay, let's get started. we can just ask each one of you to briefly explain or describe your experience with AI, starting again with Daniel.
Sure. So a lot of my experience with AI has been through my work for Slater, the language industry research and consultancy firm. I have been a researcher, a market researcher on AI topics, AI use cases in translation. And that has given me exposure to the latest and greatest in the area and to some of the people driving these innovations. I have also been administrator of ATA's language technology division for a while, where we offer a lot of programming for ATA members and discussions with our members that revolve around AI. And we generally view AI as a productivity tool, something to help linguists be more efficient, get more done, get rid of tasks they would rather not do, get access to new jobs, do things differently. And as part of my research for Slater and for my ATA work, and also out of my own curiosity, I make a point of experimenting with the latest tools and features, even way outside my immediate field of translation. So, for example, all my presentations that I give nowadays would include images generated with Midjourney.
Okay, thank you for that. Yuri?
Yes, so there are these two sides of me. One is kind of theoretical, the other is more practical. So on the theoretical side, since I'm affiliated with the AI Institute, I'm kind of involved in thinking about the latest developments almost by definition. Now, our institute is interdisciplinary, so it draws on different departments, philosophy, psychology, languages, computer science, of course, and then even forestry. A lot of people bringing their perspectives. And since I'm coming from philosophy, I have my own angle. So I'm trying, just like everyone else, I'm trying to keep up with the developments. It's not easy because something is happening every day, and just reading the abstracts of new papers is a tall order.
Yeah.
But one of the most interesting questions for me is probably the question of interpretability, especially mechanistic interpretability, because I mean, it's very important. Current AI systems are very opaque. It's not easy to put your finger on what exactly goes on in them. So you kind of bring some tools from cognitive science, logic, philosophy to try to kind of concoct some models for understanding it. And that's what I'm interested in. But on a more practical side, as a translator, I've been using AI, if you take it broadly to include neural machine translation. I've been using it in my workflow for a long time, and now increasingly experimenting with LLMs in all aspects of my work, translation per se, but also terminology extraction and bilingual lexicon induction, those kind of tasks. Also domain adaptation using translation memories and term bases, and editing, and more, actually.
Wow. Okay, thanks for that. Michael?
Thanks. So I got interested in AI back in the 1991 timeframe, working with ADP on something called expert systems. And this preceded a lot of narrow AI that you saw over the last 20 years. It was a rules-based model of providing question and answer systems. I also got involved with computational linguistics on a practical deployment scale. Working with IBM Watson Research, a lot of that work made it into the foundation of what became IBM Watson. Then I began working in the areas of what we call neurosymbolic artificial intelligence. I got turned on in around 2015 timeframe on something called knowledge graphs, ontologies, and taxonomies, and realized that a semantic based approach to AI was truly the future. And when generative AI became popular in the industry, the models became much more well known. In my team and the knowledge platform and engineering team that I manage at Avalara, we began building solutions on top of these large language models around 3.5 years ago. So we're focused today on building more advanced models, what we call advanced retrieval augmented generation, or RAG systems. And I'm specifically building out and making public models that use linguistics, that use language to drive those neurosymbolic knowledge graphs for the next generation from where people are today.
Wow, sounds interesting. Yeah, I have seen recently some posts, some discussions about leveraging AI to generate these graphs. So that's something that is a bit mind-blowing. But anyways, maybe we can comment on that later. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, I've been an observer, not a developer of AI systems. I'd call myself a pendulum watcher, as I saw the pendulum swing from symbolic AI, where you couldn't get a connectionist article accepted in a peer-reviewed journal, to where the current focus on what I like to call subsymbolic, where you can't get a paper on symbolic AI published in the same journal or its successor. And I'd kind of like to see that pendulum not swing quite so wildly from side to side, which really intrigues me then to hear, Michael, you talk about a neurosymbolic approach. So right now, my most recent contact with AI has been working with a grad student, Catherine Marshall, who just defended a few days ago her master's thesis in linguistics and did an evaluation using MQM, multidimensional quality metrics for translation quality evaluation, of both human translation, translators trying to get certified by the American Translators Association. I noticed that Yuri you put CT after your name, which I assume is certified translator, certified by ATA, as am I. I am also CT. And comparing that with neural machine translation and Gen AI translation prompted. So, and looking at the output from the same source text of these various translations, and looking for patterns, not just overall quality, but patterns. So that's been quite interesting for me over the last few months.
Okay, thank you for that, Alan. So my next question is about how AI, or whether AI can be effectively used in the language industry, in particular, and the question is, in what sectors of the language industries can AI be effectively used? And by language industry, I'm referring to translation, but also content authoring, technical writing and marketing, which are a form of content authoring, of course, but content management, search engine optimization. These are all language-based features or functions, if you will. And I wonder, where can AI be effectively used in these different sectors of the language industry? So again, briefly, Daniel, where do you see it most effectively used?
Right. Well, I'm sure it can be used in any one of the areas that you mentioned, but from my personal experience, I can mainly speak to translation. And I would say, so obviously, if we consider neural machine translation a form of AI, as most people seem to do nowadays, then the use case is obvious, translating per se. But even if we adopt a narrower definition, Gen AI, large language models, that kind of AI, it still allows linguists or translation buyers to do all kinds of manipulation of translated text or text that is being translated with prompting, with instructions. You can go beyond one-to-one translation that just aims to be an accurate rendering of what the source language text says. You can adapt for certain audiences. You can adapt according to a style guide. You can insert terminology that has been approved, and you can have it made consistent that way. You can also use it for glossary creation, which is something some tool makers in the industry do nowadays. A lot of potential from my perspective is in machine translation quality estimation, and all the use cases that build on that, such as automatic post-editing. And to make any of that possible, really, you need healthy linguistic assets. So by linguistic assets, I mean translation memories, term bases, style guides, edits, human edits saved as data from your past projects. And that is how you can make use of the other use cases.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Interesting that you mentioned automatic post-editing, and I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, I mean, I could imagine where even a Gen AI system, which has a large language model, based on a large language model, obviously would be able to correct certain issues that are in the post-edited machine translation. So thank you for mentioning that, as well as the other things. Yuri, your answer to that question of where AI can be used in the language industry.
Oh, yeah, I will just second everything that you said and everything that Daniel said. All of that is fair game now. I should add that as a university professor, I'm dealing with students who write B- essays using AI, and sometimes we have a hard time figuring it out. Yeah. And of course, we are using it in many aspects of our own work, to be honest. So I would add to what Daniel just said, one more thing, which is programming. So sometimes we need like to write short scripts, but I'm not a computer scientist of any sort. My programming knowledge is very minimal, but now with the help of even ChatGPT, I can easily create, or it can create for me a short script like an API call. That's just a no-brainer, and it works right out of the box.
Well, okay, I hadn't tried that. That's something I could use too. Okay, thanks, Yuri. Michael.
Yeah, there's a lot of great, huge and low-hanging business value fruit that we get out of AI today. One of the easiest ones that has measurable and demonstrable value is the cost of support case deflection and customer assistance. When customers can answer themselves, 50, 60 or more % of the questions that human support agents would otherwise be able to answer, and the cost of each of those cases, it's a pretty simple business case to show the value. Some of the other areas is enhancing the areas of controlled authoring today. We've had controlled authoring today with traditional AI, rules-based AI. Generative AI augments that and brings in additional capabilities like summarization, ideation, and additional capabilities, prompt libraries and things like that. Content management is another major area where we can use it for content design. We can use it to analyze user content journeys and determine, are we producing and mapping the correct information to achieve user goals? Can we get the content insights out of our content corpuses, and then the analytics, and even more move towards three very important areas of content as a service, where content is like electricity and the system is the grid to carry that. hyper-personalization, moving from failure mode user assistance into proactive user assistance. We know where you're failing or what you're trying to do, and we can move into the next generation, which is called agentive AI. With agentive AI, that's not just tell you how, but do with and do for areas that we'll be moving into, and that many shops are doing heavy research and development. This is not blue sky. This is happening right now. It's a matter of how much and what development resource do you put in which areas to focus on first, but they're all coming.
Wow. Okay. I have a question for you, Michael, but we'll go to Alan next, and then I'll come back to that. Alan, where do you think that AI can be used in the language industries?
I like to be a bit contrarian here and say that that's not the right question.
Oh, okay.
And say, well, is it useful in translation? Yes or no? It's not very helpful until we get into use cases and say, well, is it helpful in this scenario or in that scenario? And I see this nuancing of taking scenarios into account as somewhat lacking in the discourse of some colleagues who are not on this panel. And it's very frustrating to me. So I'd like us to really talk about particular use cases in translation and these other areas, and where is it useful, and when is it not as useful for either augmenting the performance of a human or replacing a human. That's the other thing we need to look at. Always keep in mind, what are we trying to do? I think Michael, maybe I read too much into it, but just a moment ago talked about what I would call augmentation, working together with a human and not necessarily replacing. Other use cases where replacement is the way to go, but not always.
Thanks for that. So I think when you were saying, Alan, it's sort of, we need to contextualize it. Like you mentioned, use cases. So those are specific scenarios where AI can be used, not just something general like translation, but where in translation, when in translation, or whether it's, content authoring, when and how. And it seems like from what I've learned anyways, there's a lot of AI discussion around specific tasks as opposed to specific jobs or general industry sectors, as I formulated that question. So this is very interesting if we need to contextualize it. And I think that's where AI is trying to go, is to find the ways to do that. I have a question for Michael. I know you are very involved in structured architected content, like around the data framework and so on. And that seems to be one of the challenges of AI. The large language models are primarily built on unstructured content. So how do we get to the next level how do we get the unstructured content into structured content? I know we can do that as people adopting the data framework or other XML markup frameworks, but that's too slow. So can AI be used to help us structure content more rapidly so that the large language models become more effective?
I'm going to say the question is probably not the right question. The question is not do we use AI to structure the content. The question is how do we make the content more effective to use with the AI? So many shops have moved over the years to what we call componentized content models. We used to develop big monolithic 5-10 pound manuals for products. Almost nobody does that anymore. The movement started a good 20-25 years ago or more, to componentize our content into topical-based models. So we need to recognize that not all content is monolithic, unstructured content, but unfortunately, that's where a lot of the industry is targeting. We're always going to have both, by the way. So the question is this: how do we take those models? How do we take that componentized content, which has already been chunked, and then how do we retrieve it so that we can retain the context and let the large language models do what it does best, not rip the content apart all the time, and then try to put context back together. That's what's been going on for the last year or two, for the most part. So we're looking at models today where if we have bodies, large bodies of componentized content, it doesn't have to be XML, like, as long as it's more componentized, topical-based kind of content, we can use those and construct ontologies and knowledge graphs to do retrieval of that content before we feed it to the large language models. Today, what they're doing is they're stuffing all this content into these similarity-based vector models that rip the content apart and then try to put it back together again, which is sort of nuts. So you have two kinds of models. One, which are models that we can architect, that we can utilize that pre-chunked content. The other kind of model is models like you're seeing with Microsoft MS Graph, which is a model where they can look at a very large corpus of unstructured content, not componentized content, and they can construct a knowledge graph using AI and then mine that. So these models are not mutually exclusive. We can put them together. We can have hybrid models that optimize structured content, even unstructured content with it, and then truly monolithic blobs of content, and move away from what we call these stochastic, cosine mathematical systems that are error prone because they're just limited. They cannot do reasoning. They cannot do inferencing. And we need to move to systems that can do those kinds of things. And that's where the industry is. The most advanced people in the industry are pushing these days. I hope that wasn't too technical.
Thank you for that, Michael. That was great. It really, yeah, there's a lot there, but it looks to me like there's promise in these different technologies in order to deal with, as you say, these large monolithic blobs of unstructured content that we need to get to a solution for that. Okay, the next question I have is, how will AI change jobs in the language industries? So Daniel, we'll start with you again.
Yep, let's do that. Well, I can very much relate to what Alan was saying about augmenting the human capabilities, as he mentioned. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge that the vast majority of the volumes of text that have been translated to date and that are being translated every day are being translated by machines with no human involvement at all. If we just compare the output of one machine translation model, say Google's translation model, that output is so enormously large and so much larger than the collective output of all ATA members, for instance. So that's just to set the context. I think for human translators that will want to stay in the industry that is increasingly shaped by technology, there will be even more of a shift from pure human translation to some form of post-editing. And I talked earlier about machine translation quality estimation that is designed to reduce the amount of machine translated content that even requires the human post-editing step. So that might be a bit of an adjustment even for those that are already doing post-editing. They might be doing post-editing with less context, post-editing of just fragments of something bigger that will not need to be proofread or post-edited as a whole document. For me, the goal of using any kind of AI in translation is to get more done and to reduce your collective cognitive load. That is something that enables the productivity gains to begin with. I think translators will be asked increasingly often to provide feedback on AI-generated translations, evaluate AI output, and the ability to do that is going to be quite crucial. Being a translator will probably also involve some knowledge of prompt engineering to be able to manipulate the machine output in the ways that your project requires. The translator job might also include maintaining healthy linguistic assets, hygiene of translation memories, term bases, knowledge bases of all kinds, style guides. And then there will, at least that's my opinion, be holdouts of the industry where human input will remain critical, because with all this customization that you can do with the client's own linguistic assets, and you can adapt to a certain style, you can allow AI to adapt to a certain style. AI-generated copy is still often perceived as formulaic, generic, predictable, repetitive, and that's exactly where human translators and copywriters and other roles can come in and either be the final arbiter of quality and the final step that makes the tweaks that they deem necessary, or they just do the work from scratch.
Okay, that sounds, thank you for that. I think to be the final arbiter of quality from when assessing the output of an AI system is going to require a certain level of cognition that is quite supernatural or superhuman, because we will be from the outset influenced by the AI output itself. It's like translators being influenced by the source text. They can't hardly get away from it. So I see the value in it and the importance of it, but I think it would be difficult, and something is a skill that we would certainly have to refine. Moving on then, Yuri, how do you see the jobs changing?
Well, again, it's easy because Daniel has already said everything I wanted to say. I will add to this that, I've been long enough to live through many changes, and there used to be a time when we were, as translators, were asked to translate generic emails or high school newsletters, or even those corporate memos written on Thanksgiving to all employees. Well, these times are gone. There is no room for human generic translation anymore. It's just not how it works. And in some estimates, 99% of the content that is translated is machine translated nowadays, maybe even more. So what about the remaining 1%? Well, I think that's really the important percent, because it includes things like contracts. So we're not at the point where we're ready to sign a machine translated contract, or at least that's not what I would recommend, or use medical guidelines, machine translated medical guidelines. So the human expert is still sorely needed somewhere in the loop, but it's obvious that the nature of our work is changing very rapidly, even as we speak. And just to second another point Daniel made, I am often asked not to translate anymore, but rather to clean up translation memories or extract terminology from them. And obviously, this is needed to have like a good resource for maybe training an MT system. I don't know how it's used, but it could be used in many different ways. But that's what we do increasingly, and I think this trend will continue. Yeah.
Thanks, Yuri. Michael.
That reminds me of a story a couple of years ago. when generative AI was just breaking. I was in a large conference in standing up in front of a ballroom of content professionals that included information architects, content strategists, terminologists, writers, managers, the whole 9 yards. And the question that they were looking at, to me, they looked like deer in the headlights, asking, are our jobs going away? And I sat there and basically told them that, they often hear about humans in the loop. I think it's the wrong way to look at it. I think it's AI in the loop for humans.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I told them flat out that their jobs were not going away. I explained why. I showed them the math. I showed them the models of how large language models actually work under the covers. That was fascinating to them. But what I showed them mostly was where the weaknesses were and what the road ahead was to overcome, or at least begin to overcome, those weaknesses. And that had everything to do with knowledge management. It had everything to do with what professional knowledge managers have known for a long time, right? I predicted that we were going to need to increase resources to be able to do AI, and in fact, that's happened. If we've lost any jobs, it's because we may have taken resources from one area because we need so much more resource to build the AI systems that we need to build. And language is at the very core of that. So, we need more terminologists, we need more taxonomists, people that know ontology, people that know knowledge graphs. I predicted, and I was watching at the time, the likes of Amazon and Google and Facebook go out and hire all these taxonomists and ontologists. And I said, mark my words, when the rest of the world catches on, these companies all over the world are going to be scouring the universities, the library science majors, and they're going to be recruiting them like the NFL draft. And I think it's happening because it takes those skills, and those are not easy skills to develop on the job, even though many are trying. It's one thing when you've got, somebody who's just learned how to put together an ontology, which is part science, part black art, and somebody who's got 30 or 40 years that can architect an enterprise knowledge model. Those are two different sets of skills that we need a whole lot more people to build and do. So I see more jobs coming for quite some time. I don't see less jobs going on.
Thanks, Michael. That's very interesting. It sounds like the more jobs, yes, for language professionals, but particularly linguists who are willing and able to develop their technical side, as you say. And I think that's very important. I mean, I teach at the university, and at the university in Canada here, I teach in the translation program, and also prior to that in a university in the States and elsewhere. And I found that the pedagogical approach is still very traditional, still very much pen and paper. And I think we need to create or develop, train these linguists to become more computational linguists, because if they're going to fill these jobs that are coming out, they're going to have a wider set of technical skills. I have noticed jobs, and going back to what you said, I have noticed jobs in LinkedIn from Amazon for ontologists, taxonomists all over the place. It's quite interesting to see how many there are, and other companies, also in the medical field, of course, where they have these highly structured medical knowledge systems. So it's very exciting. But yeah, I think the training is a little bit lagging behind in that area, which I think we're going to have to ramp up. Alan, sorry, Michael, yeah, you had your hand raised?
I just want to underscore one point, and I think we still have a lot of work to do in business to educate the management team that I always say terminology is the foundation for these semantic sciences. That it is the source of truth for words. It's very simple. We're working with words. If we build taxonomies and ontologies and knowledge graphs and all those great semantic stacks without a solid foundation of term bases and terminology management, I often say we're building a building on it. It's a house of cards. It will fall down and collapse. It's a challenge because it's not the sexiest set of technologies when you're talking about the semantic sciences, and explaining, to senior management that we need enterprise scale work in this area rather than just delegating data and data management and master data down to the individual development teams. We have a lot of work to do to bring that to the C-suite and explain to them what this long-term investment means for the company.
Thanks a lot for that, Michael, that extra bit of information there. And I'm just going to repeat this because it's great for the video. I really liked your expression that AI is in the loop, not humans in the loop. That's pretty cool. All right, Alan, your thoughts on how how AI can change jobs in the language industry.
Well, I'd like to second what I've been hearing here and bring up a question that's closely related, but from a slightly different perspective. We need people who understand the fundamental difference between domain-specific language and general language. These, we tend to, I think most people, I would never say that about this panel, but a lot of people don't really sense how different they are and how they need to be treated differently. So it brings us to metadata, and until we have reliable metadata about what I call a lexical terminological unit, which is kind of a cover term for a word or phrase in general language and a term in terminology work, until we shorten it to an LTU, until we have reliable metadata on these LTUs, so we know whether it's domain specific, what domain it's from, or whether it's general language, and that is in our text. It's part of structuring, and I think that people who really understand these two areas, general language and domain specific, understand the principles of terminology management, will be among those who are in high demand, as has been explained.
Thanks, Alan. That sounds very encouraging, actually. So yeah, I totally agree as well. I'm sure everybody on the panel would also agree to your comments. Thank you for that. So there's one more final question before we can end this interview, this panel interview. And this is, I think some of you have touched on this question already, talking about the need for a semantic base in AI applications. So let me ask this question again. Could digital language resources enhance the performance of AI? And if so, which types and how could they do this? So I use the term digital language resources here very generally. It can refer to translation memories or authoring memory or SEO keywords or terminologies, ontologies, taxonomies, knowledge graphs. All of these are digital, even data topics, for example, these are all digital language resources. So where is the best piece of low-hanging fruit for AI in the area of digital language resources? So I'm going to change the order now just to be fair to everybody, and I'm going to start with Alan.
I would build on what I said to the previous question, say that the future is enhancing the amount of digital resources we have that have reliable metadata, and that can then be used, and not just, oh, I love what you said, Michael, about they rip apart these structured text and then try to put it back together. I think you called it nuts. And I would certainly agree, probably use something stronger. And the if we need systems, we need digital. So I'm going to go a little bit beyond the question. We need digital resources that have reliable metadata in them already. And I I'm going to go back to an obsolete term, natural language processing, NLP systems, including AI, that use it. Don't rip it apart and try to put it back together unreliably. There we go.
Okay. Yuri.
Yes, I would agree with that. I would add that in the context of translation, of course, our digital resources are translation memories and term bases. So if they are really good, they can be used in any number of ways now, even in the context of our individual workflows. You could customize neural machine translation models nowadays. You could certainly add TBs to a number of engines like DeepL. So the question is whether it always works perfectly. The answer is no, actually, because in my experience, for example, sometimes I would say all AI-based systems do adapt to terminology, but they often do it at the cost of losing the quality, the overall quality of translation, and sometimes at the cost of what is known as catastrophic forgetting. So, but to judge what really happens here, you need a human eye and a human brain, really, and sometimes it's an intricate balance of many considerations. So I think we need to look for some kind of new type of symbiosis between humans and machines in order to perform these more advanced tasks, sort of meta tasks. Yeah.
A new symbiosis between humans and machines. That's pretty interesting. A way of putting it. Thank you for that. Michael.
I think a real core area that we can focus on is content intelligence. It's not enough just to take content and shovel it at AI. The most advanced AI today is coming back around. We talked earlier about neurosymbolic models. Named entity recognition is a key piece of identifying and managing the content. So if we can augment our content with controlled language, controlled vocabularies, taxonomies, if we can optimize the content itself, if we can augment it by labeling that content, so that when the named entity retrieval kicks in and we try to do inferencing and we try to do reasoning instead of just similarity retrieval and similarity search that's happening today, we're really headed toward the next phase of reliable, explainable, and accurate AI. It does not replace the human in the situation. It just makes it much more effective. Today, people are happy with 70 or 80% effectiveness. There is a theory that says as we get better, as we start reaching higher levels of accuracy, the dissatisfaction level of users and intolerance for mistakes is going to grow exponentially. So even as we apply these technologies and hit the 90s and the high 90s, that tolerance for the last 5 or 10% is going to become very low. And we really need the linguistic and semantic intelligence. And that doesn't come free. You need to build the knowledge models. You need to enhance the content. You need to mine it. It is about the metadata, absolutely. And it's not just about the content metadata. It's about infusing the entire operations management with digital systems of record to go with managing all of this content. Today, companies are, or I should say engineering teams that are building AI, are scraping content from every which place you can possibly imagine in the company without regard to thinking about change management. And what does it have? Content knowledge does not stay static. You ingest content, those facts will change on you overnight. How are you going to do all that change management? And that has to do with the metadata, that has to do with the semantic intelligence, that has to do with intelligent content, as we call it. So there's a long road ahead here. There's a lot of time bombs that are ticking that folks aren't thinking about. And I think that we have a big role to play in the language space to help that.
Okay, and thank you for that. I think, Yuri, I've asked you already, I believe. Daniel, would you like to comment on that question of which
Yeah.
type of digital language resources could enhance AI?
Yeah, I'd just like to add a few from the translation space in addition to what Yuri mentioned. So obviously translation memories are an obvious linguistic resource. That's the term that we often use in the translation space. Term bases also, but something that is also extremely important in order to fine-tune or perfect AI output is edit data. So the delta between raw machine translation and translation post-edited by humans and the translation buyers that had a little more foresight in the past few years have been saving that data. Not all have, and those that have will be able to benefit from AI sooner or even more. So edit data is important, human feedback, meaning numeric scores, but also language written out feedback, obviously style guides, obviously all kinds of knowledge bases. All that is enormously important to customize large language models or build custom models if you really have a lot of such data. RAG, retrieval augmented generation, allows for a lot of customization when you don't quite have enough data to build your own model. And using RAG is one way of arriving at what Michael mentioned, explainable AI that is grounded in authoritative information that is traceable to your own linguistic resources. And I will go back to the point that I made earlier. Hygiene is really key. Management of these resources, maintaining consistent, clean linguistic resources without duplicates, without inconsistent terminology, inconsistent tone of voice. And to maintain this level of hygiene that will make these linguistic resources helpful for AI, it means a lot of work opportunities for humans too.
Thank you for that, Daniel. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned consistent resources, clean resources, resources without ambiguities or conflicts, conflicting information. And then you also mentioned, I think, the style or the tone of information produced. And that's an interesting point because we have different sectors of society and different demographics that require different styles and tones. And perhaps that's where Alan's point about metadata would come into play, where we could say, okay, this is the type of information you produce for this demographic group, and these are the features of this other style that you produce for this other demographic, and so forth. And I give, for example, the news media. In Canada here, we have our national news broadcaster, CBC, and they have an entire version of their news platform for kids, CBC Kids. And so it's interesting because even the message at the bottom of the web page that talks about cookies, like whether you can, you accept cookies, it's phrased differently. It's even got a picture of a chocolate chip cookie there for children. So we have different styles, and they are justified and even required for certain context. I mean, Alan mentioned context as well. So, and metadata has to be there to direct the system to deliver the appropriate information. So I think everything that you all have said, Daniel, Yuri, Michael, and Ellen, seem to kind of give the same message that we need intelligence. We need to infuse intelligence in these systems that are based on human input, actually. Yeah. So I've asked all the questions. And we're just about finished with time here, but I wonder if anybody, has an urgent, desire for a last word here, for the purpose of this video, because I've been asking the questions and you haven't had the opportunity necessarily to say everything you wanted. So I'd just like to open it up and see if there's anybody who Anybody who would like to add a final message before we close?
Thank you. That's my final message. Thank you to
Thank-
you,
I
Kara.
second that.
It's been very,
Okay.
thank you.
It's been very informative for me. Okay, I'm going to I'm going to shut the video off now, but I'd ask you to stay on so that we can do some housekeeping. Thanks a lot, and I'll just stop the video now. Okay.